So these are going to be the best decks in Hearthstone, and since the expansion has been out for a week now, I think this list will be pretty reliable because the meta has had that time to settle, and I'm just going to jump into it. The best deck in the game is Quest Hunter. And for me, this is no question. Because of the Wild Seed package, it now has damage on board and a ton of direct damage from hand, which it has always had. It has basically no weaknesses. Shaman can't eat anything or freeze anything because you don't run that many minions. You are able to kill all of the classes that don't have a ton of healing or do damage to themselves like Warlock. And against Druid, you have ways of generating massive boards, so you just overwhelm them, even if Druid gains a little bit of armor from like an Earthen Scales or something. The next deck on this list is going to be mid-range or control shaman, whatever you want to call it. It basically is the most flexible deck in the game, and if you're not playing against Quest Hunter, I think this deck has like no bad matchups. Basically, you have ways of disrupting your opponent at all stages of the game. If you're playing against a Druid or a combo-oriented deck, you have the Mad Duke and Mutanus along with the Bird and other Battlecry related cards in order to stop their combos. You are able to deal with board-based decks with things like Snowfall Guardian as well as Brucon and the Insatiable Devourer, which can become absolutely huge, by the way, which shuts people down there. And if you need to be the aggressor, you can definitely do that with the Murloc package, as well as Command of Neptulon to get 2 5/4s out there relatively early, and then finish off your opponent with things like Brucon and Glug. Oh yeah, and that doesn't even mention the fact that you have an OTK with Sire Denathrius and Bran, or you can play Sire Denathrius and copy its Battlecry with the Brilliant Macaw and do tons of damage over 1 to 2 turns. And third is the deck that everybody's been waiting for, and that is Imp Warlock. Imp Warlock is extremely strong, and if basically it's able to get the ball rolling early game, it is unstoppable. If you're able to play Flame Imp into Vile Library, into Fiendish Circle, and then activate that Vile Library, you basically won the game turn 3, not to mention the insane draw package from Impending Catastrophe, and the really solid late game, or at least mid game, late game for an aggro deck, with Shady Bartender, Tamsin, and Imp King Reform. This deck is absolutely absurd. It's very hard to consistently kill these massive boards, and eventually your opponent's just going to run out of removal and you're just going to win. The next deck on this list is going to be Naga Priest, and I'm not sure why this deck is flying as under the radar as it is. I don't know if it's because it's difficult to play or because it's kind of boring, maybe both, but this deck has the 3rd highest win rate in the game, and if you're not able to kill a minion like 1 time, you just win. So let's just say you have a treasure guard out and they don't have the damage to kill it, so they let it stay there. Next thing you know, you're able to play a Serpent Wig on it and then a Bless, and all of a sudden it's like a 9/9 turn 3 or 4, and you're slapping your opponent in the face with it. If they couldn't kill it turn 3, they definitely can't kill it now. Not to mention the fact that you have Pelagos, which is a great card to stick on the board turn 3. You have Najak and the Shard of Naru to get over taunts, and you also have a really solid draw engine in the new location, which is a lot better than I initially thought it was going to be. And yeah, this deck just flows really well. The next deck on this list is Spooky Scary Skeleton Mage, and my only real issue with this deck, also, you don't have to run this version, this is just the version that I like. If you don't have some of these legendaries, you don't need all of them. But the biggest issue that I have with this deck is simply the fact that it doesn't really win with the skeletons. More of the time it wins with the Reckless Apprentice and Mordresh and Magister and that Wildfire like hero power package, as opposed to the skeleton. So I'm actually hoping that they get a little bit more skeleton support with the mini set a little bit down the road. Obviously this is really early, and this deck is still really good. Like, it's the 4th or 5th highest win rate deck in the game. It's still extremely powerful. It just doesn't feel like it's spooky scary skeleton oriented, but despite that, it's still really strong. You're able to get like a Frostweaver Dungeoneer out turn 3 and create some extra little 1/1 minions that freeze, which does really well against aggro decks. Reckless Apprentice, if you get a Wildfire out early, is insane removal. It's just a really good deck. Next on the list is going to be Ramp Druid. This is No Hands Gamer's list, and honestly, I think that it's pretty good. Basically, you want to summon a lot of tokens and kill them all off to infuse the Denathrius, and then you want to try to OTK your opponent with Brand Denathrius basically as soon as possible, or you could play him with Kael'thas, up to you. But since you have Guff, it's usually pretty doable to just go Brand Denathrius. You have good survivability with the Earthen Scales. Quick little fun fact, if you're able to play Insatiable Devourer to kill off a board of giant minions, and then you just play Earthen Scales on it, you can gain more armor off of this than you could with a 19 mana Ibis that you then use Innervate and Earthen Skills, like before the nerf. The amount of armor you can gain off of Insatiable Devourer is insane. And then you also have this nature package that allows you to survive early and create tokens that synergize with Topiary. But it basically all relies on you getting that early ramp as well as guff, which is why sometimes this deck kind of falls flat and loses to aggro. So play this one at your own risk. You do kind of need to high roll a little bit early, but it's very, very strong. The last deck on this list is going to be Face Hunter, and I don't usually like putting two decks from the same class on here, but it is just insane how much damage this deck can put out and how fast it's able to do it. And then late game, you finish off your opponent with a Twin Bow Terror Coil to double activate Aim Shot or Collateral Damage, and Collateral Damage can sometimes do upwards of like 26 damage if you double activate it, which is a lot stronger than I thought it was going to be, by the way. So overall, this deck is really fast. If you want a fairly cheap deck that just runs your opponent down, has good on-board damage and good finishing potential from your hand, this is definitely the deck for you. All of these decks are solid and you can climb with. And I did not mention every single one of them. Other decks like Miracle Rogue have some potential. I think that there are a couple of builds of, I want to say, Quest Priest that have surprised me at least a little bit, as well as Pure Paladin, which is very strong as well, and even Evolve Shaman, just normal Evolve Shaman without the control package, are all fine. I just don't think they're as good as the decks that I put on this list, so they will not be included in the description, but every single one of these other decks will be. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I like making these tier lists. I'll probably make one after the nerfs come out because they're predicted to come out next week, so just keep that in mind, and I hope you guys enjoyed. See you in the next one.